at fullback. His cousin Peter is locking the scrum. He comes in for Laurie Monaghan, of course, who's back home in Sydney, and I'm sure watching this match this afternoon. On the wing, Brendan Moon is in, and Bill McKidd comes in the centres. They're the three changes. Otherwise, the Australian team remains the same as for last Saturday. And the All Black side for the test today is identical to that which won the first test at Wellington last week by 13 points to 12. Captained by number 5, lock forward, Frank Oliver. You notice the New Zealand Army band there. Australian viewers, I'm sure, will be interested to see that rugby formation they're into. 30 bandsmen formed out in the rugby positions of two teams in opposition. New Zealand team arriving first on the oval, led by Frank Oliver, the captain. Here's Tony Shaw with the Australian team. And last onto the field for the participants is Dave Miller, the referee from last week, who will be refereeing his 6th international test match this afternoon.
Yes, well, I must tell viewers back home that the wind is fairly strong, blowing from right to left, very strong, and it will be important, I believe, to see what happens when the toss is made.
The national anthems. So the important thing to remember is that the wind is going from right to left. New Zealand team sprinting down. Looks like they may play from the left-hand half. That's the northern half, which will mean they're playing into the wind. There's Stuart Wilson, minus the big bandage around his head that we saw last week in Wellington, protecting a cut on the face. He'll be on the New Zealand's wing today, number 14, with Brian Williams, number 11. And it seems as though Australia will kick off, so New Zealand must have won the toss. And New Zealand electing to play into the wind, Trevor Allen.
Yes, that staggers me a little bit. This wind is very strong. It may continue for the whole match. But obviously, I did expect if New Zealand won the toss was to run with the wind, because they would put tremendous pressure on McLean, who must be, Paul McLean, their fullback, must be under a slight cloud with his fitness. And I think they've given Australia a little bit of leeway.
So this is Ken Wright, the man who played such a vital role in the test for Australia last week. So the second international for the 1978 tour by Australia against New Zealand begins with Ken Wright's kick. Gary Sear puts the ball to touch. Australia have the advantage of a strong southerly breeze in the first half. Number 8 is Greg Cornelson. 7 is Lester Rutledge for New Zealand. The Australian backs, you notice, lined out in attacking fashion. Peter Horton to make the first throw. Throw-ins in the first half may favour New Zealand if they're bouncing about, because the wind will blow them there. Now that's what Jack Gleeson said he expected more of from the New Zealand team in this test. More driving forward play in the All Black tradition. Halfbacks today, Mark Donaldson and John Hipple. Donaldson with the ball. Doug Bruce deflected by Ken Wright. Stu Wilson. This is Barry Ashworth, number 6. The whistle has gone, however. The whistle has gone. These men are playing a game of their own.
Well, there must have been a slight knock on there. I must admit I didn't quite see it. It must have been a very fine one by the All Blacks. And Australia knocked that ball down. It looked like Ken Wright. And so Australia were in with a chance. But they looked bad then, but the whistle had gone, of course.
John Hipple has the first loose head for Australia in this match. 2 minutes, first half. Wright dropped that one. Purely and simply, Taylor through with Bruce. Wilson waiting. That's Bevan Wilson putting play up to halfway. Paul McLean took the ball that time. You see the bandage on his right knee, and that's the big question mark for Australia today. Can that knee survive 80 minutes? Let's see how the wind affects this one. We'll get a good view down the halfway line. Peter Horton from Queensland throw. That one fooled no one. The crowd spoke their opinion. Not straight. New Zealand's put in on halfway. Donaldson looking for an improved performance after a disappointing display by him last week. Someone's going to have to play halfback. Frank Oliver does it. Dive past the Bruce. Here's Paul McLean. That's a big kick with the wind. Bevan Wilson back inside the 22. Lots of support behind him. The All Blacks dropped 3 or 4 men back in support of the man with the ball.
Well, that kick by McLean will have given him a reasonable amount of confidence. I thought he was labouring a little bit getting across.
Cornelson 7 for the Blacks. Gary Knight is number 8. Cornelson number 8, I should say. Lester Rutledge number 7. Deflected onto Australia's side. Peter McLean taking it in.
There we're watching the power of this All Black pack. Last week they had about 3 new caps in their lineup. They'll be putting it together, but the Australian pack went very well last week.
Hipwell to Wright. That's Slack kicking through to Wilson. Stu Wilson just hurried that one a little. That's Wilson number 14. So the line-out battles we put out between Oliver and Hayden for New Zealand and Clay and Peter McLean for Australia. But Cornelson, as usual, getting good ball down at the back against the New Zealand jumper down there, Gary Sear. This is Peter Hawke. Five minutes gone.
The penalty against Australia. Currently interference in the line-out. Remember, New Zealand facing a fairly strong wind.
That's Hipwell. Ball still in play from Bevan Wilson's kick. Mark Taylor. Mark Donaldson got it. Couple of kicks there from New Zealand, not finding touch. Peter McLean. Gary Sear, backhanded to Tony Shaw. There was a fair bit of niggle on the first test, and referee Dave Miller did issue a final warning Of course, he comes back to scratch here, dealing with players the same personalities here in the second test. 15 metres Australian territory. There's the two men involved in that instance. Tony Shaw to the right, and in the background, Gary Sear. Hipwell. Combination between Hipwell and Wright, not looking too good just in the early stages.
Yes, I'm wondering whether Hipwell is feeling the effects of that slippery ball. It will be very slippery, but so far, the combination, as Keith has said, Hipwell is not finding Wright, and Wright is not standing that far away.
Here we go. 10-7-6 black. Make him stand.
Gary Knight deflected that one from Andy Dalton's throw.
Well, with the All Blacks pouring through there, you've got a fair indication of the power of them, certainly making it very difficult for Hipwell.
Squeeze. Oh, quiet.
Hipwell now. It's time to Wright. That's a high test for Wilson. Bevan Wilson under it.
Well taken. A lot of pressure coming from 3 or 4 Australians. Took that well. And there you get an indication that the wind is fairly strong. He was centre field. But we might get a look at the touch judge flag there. It's billowing a fair bit. So Australia certainly have the advantage with the wind. Now it's all wrapped up, so we can't really tell.
International referee Tom Ducey running the line on the far side. Short line out called by Australia. Sear made the intercept. Donaldson. Bruce. That one's gone straight through Paddy Batch's legs on the far side. That kick from number 10, New Zealand's first 5'8", Doug Bruce, playing on his home ground here this afternoon. Clean line outs, 2 each at the moment. You can see the Peter Horton drying the ball off deliberately before each throw. That's to get the proper traction to his grip, most important. Garrick Fay, number 5, with Barry Ashworth handing off Hipwell, who gets back into the action. This is just outside the Australian 22. And New Zealand are driving more strongly already than they did last week.
Yes, I would think that their tactics have changed a little bit. They are going to certainly, as they're against the wind, use the power of their forwards.
Donaldson, way to Bruce, changed to Mark Taylor. That's Williams. Centre kick. Let's see how McLean handles this. Paul McLean. That's a big kick with the wind. Once again, the All Blacks putting plenty of men behind Bevan Wilson, the fullback, who's put it up in the air, and that's hanging up in the breeze. Cornelson got through well. 10-metre mark in Australian territory. Donaldson finds Bruce. Donaldson again. The old cricketing adage, never take your eye off the ball. Donaldson was just looking anxiously to see where the opposition was coming from, and the ball deflected forward.
Well, I think Donaldson was on his way before he really got the ball. He had made up his mind and took his eye off it.
It's the halfway line. Hipwell to right. It's moving this time to slack. Barry Ashworth, 10-metre line, Australia. New Zealand will have the foot in here. 10 minutes gone, first half, no score. Scrum position, no loose heads so far, but 5 scrums, 1 for New Zealand. Donaldson slipping that time to Bruce. Taking time to find themselves again. It's a little awkward out there. Here's Paddy Batch. Wilson, it's hard to turn in the slippery conditions. Good kick ahead along the touchline by Batch.
This Batch, big burly winger, is one player that, as we saw last week, went near the line, very difficult to stop. It was a good kick. And so now Batch has put Australia in a good attacking position just inside the quarter.
So that's Andy Dalton, just 20 metres from New Zealand's line. Donaldson, referee Miller, penalty Australia.
Well, that was very difficult to pick, and it looked as though maybe there was some assistance, but one could hardly see it from this side of the field. And it's coming up, it's the first chance for anyone to kick. And so here it is, Ken Wright coming up to take the first chance for either side to score. This is not a difficult one. It was interesting prior to the game to hear Ferdy McCormick talking about kicking. Now, Ferdy McCormick was a great goal kicker for Canterbury, which of course is their home ground, and he was discussing the swirling breeze. Now, I believe down this end the breeze does swirl round, and this is for Australian viewers to really get in. This kick of Ken Wright's, it swirls around, and it's not an easy end apparently to kick.
12 minutes gone. Loose ball near the line. Well, that's interesting. Now, I know for one that Andy Leslie's got a theory about the ball hitting the post here at Lancaster Park, and it's happened again.
Well, I must say that we discussed that just before the game.
Hipwell caught by Donaldson. Bruce Robertson and Taylor playing soccer. Taylor looked as though he's head of the ball and accidentally offside. That was one thing we were discussing. Andy Leslie has this theory, I know for one, that the ball does hit the post a lot here at that end at Lancaster Park, and that happened again with Ken Wright. Why it happens, one does not know. John Hipwell. Here's a drop kick. And that, Ken Wright got a second bite of the cherry and has drop kicked Australia into an early 3-point lead. Ken Wright, number 10.
And so there it is, Australia 3, New Zealand 0.
"13 minutes gone. Australia out in the lead. Wilson's kicked strongly, but you see how that ball holds up in the wind, which is behind Australia. Paul McLean. So far, McLean not been put to the test. So Australians will be pleased to have the wind behind them in the first half, because it would have been doubly difficult for Paul McLean to have played with the dicey leg into this high wind. Good tap by number 4, Hayden. Bruce to Mark Taylor, having a run, trying to test that Australian defence, which was so shaky last week. Donaldson, New Zealand trying to keep it going with his driving forward play. Quickly in, Australia up offside, and that cost them points last week, and they've conceded a penalty again in midfield, but it's 40 metres out. It'll be a tough one. So here's Bevan Wilson, first attempt now. That's the 10-metre line. So 40 metres now. Normally, on a normal day, this would be well within his range, but he's kicking into a strong breeze from the south, which is that end of the park. Bevan Wilson has now kicked 22 points in his test career. This is his 4th international. That's a bad hook by Wilson, also holding up in the breeze. So that's a missed kick by Bevan Wilson, and the ball cleared away to the 22-metre line.
It's not a good kick at all, but the wind is strong. That's why I was amazed that New Zealand didn't take the wind and put the pressure on Paul McLean after winning the toss.
Dalton. Gary Pearce taken away from the ball by Rutledge. Now another drive by the All Black forwards. Gary Sear picks up the loose ball, just 10 metres to go. Donaldson. Williams. Plenty of Australians across, giving Williams tough time right across the touchline. Just 10 metres to go. Brian Williams, that was the corner he got across in last week in the test from Donaldson at Athletic Park.
And what a magnificent winger. He certainly runs hard, and the Australians paid him a lot of attention, a lot of compliments in getting there. About 4 of them had to get there.
Peter Horton. New Zealand have it. Donaldson. Bruce Robertson. A lot of traffic there. Donaldson. Rutledge. Shaw has him, the Australian captain. That's their goal line behind. Here's Tony Shaw. This is just out from the post, centre field. Again, New Zealand win the ruck. Donaldson. Bruce, a left-footed drop kick. That's one each to the two number 10s.
And so the game building up in tempo, but one must say at this stage the New Zealand 8 are driving forth very well.
3 points each. 17 and a half minutes gone. Gary Sear in position. Back to Brian Williams. Brian Williams playing his 33rd international today, his 98th game in all, counting tour matches, in the All Black uniform. And he's the only survivor, in fact, of the New Zealand team which played here on this ground against the last Wallabies team here in 1972. We have an injury. Andy Dalton is hurt.
Well, certainly it's been a most interesting match so far. Both sides feeling each other out, but certainly New Zealand, whom we are looking at now, have decided that with going against the wind, they're really going to drive their forward pack, try and take charge, keep it fairly close, I would think, and they're running around the scrum base and doing it very well. And Donaldson and Bruce combining fairly well, better this week than they did last week. Australia, of course, to get in or stay in the game, have got to chase points in this first half with this strong wind. But Australia looking just a little looser in the forwards.
Outside the New Zealand 22. That one's not straight. Peter McLean, number 4, was the lock forward, was just limping a few minutes ago. We'll keep an eye on that for you. 3 points each. Donaldson. Again, a high ball to Bruce. Doug Bruce drop-kicking a goal there. It's his 3rd drop goal in Test match. The other 2 were in South Africa in the 1976 series. So that's 3 drop goals. That's the first the All Blacks have kicked on this ground since 1959. Somehow drop goals have just not counted for New Zealand on this ground in the last 19 years. Not until today, that is. Well tapped by Cornelsen, getting up with 2 hands and deflecting. That's interesting, Trevor. It was a tap back on Australia's side, but New Zealand got over the top.
Yes, they're the New Zealand pack, I must say, they're really getting together more today than they were last week.
Lester Rutledge, the flanker on the near side. Gary Knight propping against John Meadows. On the near side, Bruce. High kick. Match there. Williams got through quickly. That's Paul McLean. Paul McLean won't be taking the goal kick for Australia today, although he's been a tremendous point scorer. He got 42 points in 3 games against Wales earlier this season. But Ken Wright doing the post kicks at the moment. There's Ken Wright, the man who drop kicked Australia to that early lead. Now it's 3-3, 1 drop kick apiece. That's Hayden getting a good deflection. Straight to Taylor from Donaldson. Williams through, testing the Australians through the centre again. New Zealand in control. Donaldson, Stu Wilson. Brendan Moon getting across and handling or being in the play for the first time in Test rugby. Stu Wilson making a strong bid up that right wing side. Lineouts favouring the All Blacks 6-3. There's John Ashworth, also playing here on his home pitch next to John Meadows. Garrick Fay next to the New Zealand captain, Frank Oliver. Peter McLean against Hayden. He noticed New Zealand with its 2 jumpers together, Oliver and Hayden. That's the kind of driving play that New Zealand looked for in the past. Donaldson. Garrick Fay has been penalised there.
So Fay came through, appeared to come through the centre of that maul, and was penalised. And here's the result coming up, a penalty to New Zealand.
Well, again, this one's not anything like a certainty for Bevan Wilson, especially after the way he hit that last one. As the rain comes in again, penalties favouring New Zealand by 3-1 so far, penalties and free kicks. And you see the wind driving into the face of Bevan Wilson as he lines up for this kick, his second attempt today. Coming up for 22 minutes in the first half. Well, that was a much better kick, hurriedly put away by Hipwell. A much better kick by Wilson, but again the wind held it up and then blew it away across the posts.
It really was an indication as to just how strong that wind is. Very difficult for the kickers, kicking to the right-hand posts.
Deep, Rutledge getting up with Gary Pearce, Donaldson, Peter McLean and Paul McLean, the two cousins from the illustrious family. Perhaps not seen to their best effect that time, knocked forward by 15, Paul McLean. That's a technical infringement in the front row, so it's only a free kick, but it'll be a chance for Australia to clear. They're using McLean on these ones. Down to Williams, not in touch. Now, Williams has done a strange thing there. He's taken a fair catch, though he's well clear of any of the other players. So this, of course, does give him a chance under the new law to kick directly back to touch. So that would be the reasoning there for that fair catch taken by Brian Williams.
Well, it was a fairly strange decision by Williams because he did have plenty of room. But one would have to be critical, unfortunately, of Paul McLean for not putting that ball out from his own quarter. Williams, a very powerful man.
That's halfway line to the left. Again, well tapped by Quinn Nelson. That's where most of the Australian throws are going. Slack. This is McLean up, out to Brendan Moon, who moves so well. Good tackle by Wilson. Dalton getting through, the ball just slipping away from him. Bruce Robertson towing through, but knocked forward by New Zealand's hooker, Andy Dalton, who was in good position there to carry things on.
Squeeze. Out. Wide. Good.
Right. Stuart Wilson going back. Good kick.
Yes, a good kick by Ken Wright, and it's put Australia in an attacking position the first time for quite some time. It's Ken Wright. Landed a nice field goal. Australia must now, a bit like New Zealand last week, start searching for points, knowing they're going to face the wind in the second half.
13, 7, 19. Black.
Donaldson.
Come on, Ash. Come on, Ash, number one.
That's Mark Donaldson.
Pick it up.
Really getting in there to his players, looking for protection. Talking there to John Ashworth at the front. That's a good take by Peter McLean. Horton through on Dalton. Andy Dalton, his third international, hooking the New Zealand scrum today from Bombay. Here's Mark Donaldson from Palmerston North. Better scrum by Australia that time. Doug Bruce. Shaw was in position. It's been deflected.
Well, it certainly was, but Brendan Moon was the man that got up for Australia, and he almost got that ball. It was deflected. Brendan Moon, that's about the first time really that he's got into the game. Had one run a short while ago. A player that obviously was excited about his selection today. So, injury here to one of the All Blacks, Doug Bruce, I think. And so Australia in a position where they must score very shortly, because I can imagine what New Zealand will do when they turn in the second half and if they get reasonable possession.
So this is a crucial scrum for Australia for their chances in this match. 26 minutes gone. Close to the New Zealand line, Australia trying for weight. New Zealand team are offside. Handy position, as you can see. Just a few yards out, and this will be an easy one for Ken Wright. They were considering taking a quick one.
So Ken Wright taking a fairly simple kick, and the lad that had all the pressure on him last week in those final moments of the test, when he could have won the game for Australia. It was a difficult kick, tremendous pressure on him, but this is one that Australia's certainly looking for, because so there's the All Blacks, probably a little bit disappointed that they were caught offside, but it was well held by Australia and it was well scrummaged by them.
Oh dear, he's just chipped that one under the bar. So the New Zealand team have had a let-off here. That ball slid away. It must have been wet and went off Wright's boot. That was really an amazing sight. Ken Wright so handily and such a good kicker.
Well, what a blow for Australia. It was quite a blow.
Here's Hipwell. Looks like a tight head that time, was it? One for Peter Horton. Wrapped up tight. So that was a strike against the head. So lots happening just in the last few minutes. That kick from Ken Wright was quite remarkable. Just travelled a few yards, mishit it, and there's important scrum here for both teams, keenly getting into it. Now Donaldson. Loose ball. Australia's getting through quickly. That's Gary Pearce in the mud behind the dead ball line. Again, bad combination between Donaldson and Bruce on the slippery grass. And that ball was skidding around behind the line. That was dangerous. Now Australia has a real chance, with Australia's put it. Cornelson, well wrapped up by Donaldson. Hipwell. 14 is Batch.
Well, two power men, that's Batch and Williams. Brian Williams, very quick, very strong. Had Batch covered.
29 minutes in the half. Again, the New Zealand shorts taking a pounding. Barry Ashworth has changes. This is Gary Knight. Trevor Allen, really Australia have been down here for a few minutes, and they've had a number of opportunities, including the kick and a couple of loose heads. They must score here.
Well, it's time is the essence in this half now, because they've missed a couple of opportunities, and they're most unfortunate because you don't get many opportunities in a test match, particularly against New Zealand.
So the rain driving in from the south. It's 3 points each, a drop goal to each of the 5/8. Coming up to 30 minutes. Coming for Donaldson, that's one good department. Crowd and good-natured cheering Donaldson for his combination.
Yes, the New Zealand public very critical.
Bruce still not happy about that knee. He's holding it there and he's limping a bit. So play now on the 22. Lineouts completely favouring New Zealand by 10-4 at the moment. That's a better one for Australia, but not helped by the rather quick dispatch.
And the penalty going against Australia. It appeared as a couple of Australians were holding jerseys as the All Black forwards started to pour through.
Bevan Wilson's really banged that one into the wind. That's a good kick. A big, strong kick from Bevan Wilson, a big fullback, 6'1" tall and 13.5 stone. And he's banged that about 35 metres upfield into the wind. Wharton, deflected by Sear to Hayden. Fed by Rutledge to Donaldson. Pushed that one up into the breeze for Batch. And McLean. McLean's gone down. McLean on the deck. All Blacks push forward. It could be that McLean's knee has gone. New Zealand over the top. Now let's look at Paul McLean. He's away just to the right there. He's sagged to the ground. And Trevor, could this be what Australia feared would happen?
Well, I must admit, I don't know whether the Australian selectors feared this, but it's something I feared that would happen to this lad. Here it comes. Now watch how McLean, when he takes it, he leaps high, and it actually, I think, is the contact when he comes down, the whole weight of his body on the legs, and obviously it affected. He's up. Here he comes down, and it's just then that he really feels it, and down he goes. It was the weight on that knee, which means it couldn't have been very healthy.
Well, this brings an overtone of drama into the situation, because if McLean goes off, the Australians did signal to the grandstand. That means Jeff Richards will come on, the Australian replacement fullback who flew from Sydney to Australia, to New Zealand just this week to replace Laurie Monaghan. And it will mean that Richards will come on, play his first international for Australia in a tight situation, and will have to face that wind in the second half.
Yes, it'll be a tremendous game, or problem, should I say, for Richards, but he is a player that I believe, and New Zealand viewers will be interested. I believe that Richards is in the stamp of Laurie Monaghan. He's a big fella and very confident, a good kicker of the ball, but McLean obviously is going from the field. No, he's not. That surprises me. I know if I was captain, I know where he'd be. Yes, that's better. On that basis, he'd have to be in the shed, and here he comes, Richards.
And so coming onto the field,
it's Jeff Richards, number 18.
Number 18, he must wait on the sideline until the injured player's been cleared. So Australia with 14 men as Sear bursts this time, just short of the line. It's there. Donaldson, away to Bruce. Doug Bruce, infield to Mark Taylor. Try! Mark Taylor scores his first try in Test rugby after Doug Bruce looked as though he was having trouble getting away on the wet conditions. First try today to New Zealand.
But I must say that Australia caught with one player off the field.
So Bevan Wilson made the conversion. It's now 9 points to 3. And Wilson delighted about that one. So the Australians getting the ball to kick off from halfway. And this is Jeff Richards from Sydney, an Englishman who's come into the Australian team as replacement, going onto the field to play international rugby after just being in this tour for 48 hours. The ball slipped over as Ken Wright kicked off. It's not a bad one in the conditions to keep it low and skipping across the turf. And Donaldson kicks back up to the 10-metre mark.
Well, what a day for Jeff Richards.
So Australia up against it now with just 6 minutes to go till half-time, and with the wind behind them, conceding points. They're going to chance their arm, it would seem. That's Bill McKidd, I think. Hipwell, away to right. They're chancing their arm all right. Look at Jeff Richards up there trying to get into the play. He's got it now. The new fullback.
Slight throw forward there.
Richards is a 27-year-old. Previously played in London. Went out to Australia in 1975. That's where he lives now. Australia gets the put in here from, looks like Donaldson must have lost it forward. Mark Donaldson. So now we're just getting New Zealand organised at the mark. John Hipwell's ball in. Against Mark Donaldson. He went and pulled Hipwell away from the ball when Hipwell was attempting to get it. That's midfield. It's kickable with the wind behind him, but as the ball gets heavier, this one from 35 metres will be pretty difficult for the kicker, Ken Wright.
Yes, well, here's the replay coming up now. There's the penalty. The All Blacks rushing through there, and of course a lot of problems for the All Blacks around the base of that maul. Weren't quite sure which way to head, and so now Ken Wright coming up to take this kick, and here you get an idea of the distance that he has to kick. And of course he missed that very simple one earlier in the match, about in approximately the 29th minute. And so here's Wright. The ball is getting very slippery, and as you can see, the ground in the background starting to cut up.
Good kick. It's there. So Ken Wright, after 37 minutes, closes the gap. 9-6 New Zealand leads.
And Ken Wright must be wondering how he missed that simple one in the 29th minute. It was a very simple one, and that one he just kicked was quite a magnificent kick under the conditions.
So from the kickoff, Australia keeping the gap closed. Penalty to New Zealand, shepherding.
And this one is in a kickable position for New Zealand. Not an easy one. Again, the wind still quite strong.
Now a cheer from the crowd because Brian Williams has been called in. Now this is a good move on Frank Oliver's part, because Williams is a very strong kicker of the ball and good from longer distances, and he can really bang them. So it'll be interesting to measure up his kicks against the two we saw from Wilson, which held up into the breeze from about that distance. So it's about 33 metres, perhaps a bit more on the angle from the posts.
Not an easy one under the conditions.
Williams in the past has put the ball straight up and down, but you see here he's going with it in the old-fashioned manner, the torpedo fashion, and is coming in straight onto the ball.
Yes, well, he obviously is hoping to drive this ball into the wind and get the distance. Standing it up, it would probably be driven back a little more than this will.
On wet days, Barry John, the great Welsh goal kicker, used to kick them this way. Williams. That was a very good kick indeed. It went away to the left, but a strong kick from Brian Williams. Certainly a worthwhile attempt as half-time looms. New Zealand leading 9-6.
Yes, it was quite a good kick. It looked as though it was going, and here comes the replay. And that really is bad football. Pearce was offside from that kick. Now it gives New Zealand a great opportunity to launch an attack, whereas Australia should be further down the field.
is on the 22-metre line. The markings on the ground have been obliterated by the wind and rain. Donaldson, central position, looking for support, has it from Rutledge. Sear, taken by Richards, the replacement fullback. Slipping forward from Gary Sear, you can see how wet it is. Australia in defence now. Donaldson gets it away from Hipwell. Loose ball here, Doug Bruce. It's like a piece of soap, that ball. It's slipping away from everyone. Ball still in play. Bevan Wilson trying a drop kick. That's ambitious. Whistle has gone. No one can get their hands on that ball down there, Trevor. It's very slippery.
All of a sudden, the game, the ball does appear to be becoming very slippery. There was a lot of water on the ground, but the mud's starting to show through.
Right on half-time now. Looks like a strike for Dalton against the head. Donaldson, Sear. New Zealand driving at the corner. That's the Australian try line. And again, to use Trevor Allen's expression from earlier in the match, the Australians paid Williams the compliment by getting the defence across very quickly in numbers to stop the New Zealand winger going in on the left wing side. Now they're going for the pushover. Donaldson, Shaw, again slipping away. This is Batch, going straight ahead. Charged down by Taylor. Now here's Bruce Robertson and Stu Wilson. Peter Horton playing halfback. Batch, Barry Ashworth and Taylor. And that's half-time. So in the first half, we've had a drop kick from Ken Wright, a drop kick for New Zealand by Doug Bruce, a try to Mark Taylor, conversion to Bevan Wilson, a penalty goal to Ken Wright. New Zealand at the changeover leads Australia in the second test by 9 points to 6. So the rain continues to drive in from the south, but in the second half it will favour New Zealand, leading by 9 to 6. And here's Bevan Wilson, number 15, to kick off for the second half. Straight down to Jeff Richards. That's a pretty good effort by Richards into the wind.
Yes, you will see that Richards can really slam the ball. Very similar to Monaghan in punching the ball.
So lineouts in the first half favoured New Zealand by 11 to 5. That's where they got a lot of their set piece advantage. They've got this one too. Ashworth and Rutledge, the two flankers. Over the top, Donaldson. Away to Bruce. Kicking for Williams. Batches in a hurry. You can see there was no way for Paddy Batch to stop. Not with his sort of momentum. And he ploughed into the crowd in the in-goal area. So Bruce's kick pushes Australia, in essence, back to the 22. And that's where Ken Wright, who's kicked all their points, is going to kick out to the far side, away from the New Zealand forwards. And that one's blown back in the breeze behind his team across the touchline.
Well, it almost came off by Ken Wright. The little kick looked as though his forwards were going to snap it up, but it curved. Just too much, that wind driving it back, the rain driving along the field now.
Hayden getting high. That's one for John Hipwell.
The driving rain here at the moment. Driving right into the Australians' faces.
Now Donaldson deciding not to send it to Bruce, which was a good idea. His forwards are going so well at the moment. Here's Lester Rutledge as a halfback. That one's miscued by Doug Bruce, who's not having such a good day today. The rain is lashing down at the moment. and you can see it really driving in against the backdrop of the big grandstands here in Lancaster Park. So we've got John Ashworth against on the near side in the front row for the second half. Donaldson, blind side. Bruce with his right boot that time. That's Brendan Moon. Cornelson, loose ball. Bevan Wilson had it. He was up in support.
And a very dangerous pass by Moon. The defence was pouring through on him. He let that ball go back inside. Would have been better to go across the sideline.
So Peter Horton has been a busy man on this tour, his 6th tour game so far. Peter McLean going high. Shaw has it with Fay in there. This is Greg Cornelson. Donaldson picked that up well. Mark Donaldson. Deflected down by Andrew Slack. That's the goal line right there.
Well, very noticeable there. You could see that the All Blacks were driving into that quite tight, and the Australian forwards a little on the loose side.
Good chance here for New Zealand. Not a day for passing amongst the backs. Gary Sear. Sear across. And Gary Sear really enjoyed that one. That's his first try in internationals as well. New Zealand now into the lead by 13 points to 6. Gary Sear, a big man at 6 feet 4.5 inches tall and 16 stone, a 26-year-old. And this is his 4th international. Frank Oliver's rallied the troops back at halfway, and I think we'll want a continuation of this effort, which has begun the second half. Bevan Wilson with the conversion. So that puts New Zealand out now to a 9-point advantage. That conversion, his second today for Otago's Bevan Wilson.
And Australia really now with their backs to the wall. The driving rain and the muddy conditions are starting to really suit New Zealand. And one must say the New Zealand forward or pack starting to operate much more like a New Zealand forward lineup.
Garrett Fay, number 5. You can see Fay going back in the lineup, the big Australian lock forward, second rower you would call him in Australia. His 22nd international today. Two tries to none now. Hipwell.
The Australians not having a happy time in the line-out. New Zealand domineering it, making it very difficult for Australia when they win it.
The All Blacks, in fact, winning the line-outs at a rate of 2-1, 14-7 at the moment. That's an untidy one for them. And Australia have actually pushed forward now to the 22. Six is Shaw, 7 is Pearce, 8 is Cornelson for the Australian team. Against Barry Ashworth.
Yes, it appeared the penalty was, I think, for jersey pulling again. Now, it's happened a couple of times. The Australians have been guilty of it, and I would think that was the first time that New Zealand, Barry Ashworth being penalised, it appeared. So a chance coming up for Australia. Ken Wright coming up. This is not a terribly difficult one, although the wind is blowing very strong, straight down the field. Under normal circumstances, well within the lad's range. That wind is strong and the driving rain, and of course now the footing is becoming a bit of a problem.
8 minutes, second half. This is Ken Wright. That's skidded off his boot, no other word for it. It's got Australia up to good position. The ball's there for them if they can get it clear. Hipwell sliding it out to Wright. Good move into the corner. That's slack, I think. Across into the water. Alan Taylor, the touch judge, also getting knocked about. That was a strong one at the corner. So Wright's kick was turned to advantage by the Australians getting up and winning the ruck. Now they're camped on New Zealand's goal line. Down by 6 to 15. Dalton throws deep. Mark Taylor. Taylor had time to get around and then kick hard to use the breeze.
As he's given New Zealand a great deal of relief. That attacking play by Slack, he looked as though he was going in the corner, so there must have been some tremendous defence from New Zealand. I thought he was there, quite frankly. But certainly the defence swept him up.
22-metre line. That's the good tactics. Back to Jeff Richards, who's having a good day at fullback since he's come into this match. Pushing it up into the breeze. Putting his team on side. Donaldson. Cornelson back with Ken Wright. Now he's got plenty of time.
Well, there you are. Cornelson got across, did very well for the forward to get across and save that. But there you saw what a good driving kick can do for New Zealand.
Rutledge did good work in that ruck. Got his body between the Australians and the ball. Australia have the loose head here.
Well, Rutledge has been playing quite soundly. He did last week to harass the Australians throughout.
Lester Rutledge, in fact, we said last week that Wright's Bush, where he comes from in Southland's just a shop, a hall and a pub. Well, of course, it's sent lots of Southlanders out looking for the pub at Wright's Bush because, in fact, there isn't one. It's just, as I said, a shop, a hall, a couple of houses and a rugby club. And that's where Lester Rutledge is playing his football at the moment. Hip ball down, that's the corner flag in the background. New Zealand giving him the rough treatment. Over the top they go. And referee Miller objects to that. Hipwell is on the deck. New Zealanders rucked him out of it in the traditional manner and were penalised for overuse of the boot, and Hipwell is on the ground.
Well, the ball, as you saw, came back rather awkwardly to Hipwell and couldn't clear it. Elected to do the right thing, of course. But he looks as though he's okay now, but it's pretty sore. Very tough international, very experienced man, and I guess he's had that happen before today.
Well, I tell you what, New Zealanders have been impressed, I'm sure, with the fullback play of Jeff Richards. He's again made a good 30 metres, which is big ground into this win from that penalty. So the eyes of the New Zealand press photographers watch as Dalton throws. He's slipping away from Peter McLean. Rutledge picks it up. No, it's one of the other players. You see Rutledge hanging on the right-hand side. Frank Oliver gets over it in the Otago tradition. Doug Bruce. That's good. Bruce Robertson, you see, getting through number 13. He's been largely unemployed this afternoon. The play just hasn't gone his way. There he is in the centre. And this is on the 22. Hipwell. Wright. That's a good break from Ken Wright. What a run into the breeze. Batch lost it forward. Clobbered by Williams from behind. And Williams was penalised for that action against Paddy Batch.
It was actually, Williams was tailing Batch all the way up there and was hindering bats from going through, and the referee obviously was watching Williams all the way, and I think he was really going to penalise him long before Williams unleashed the attack to try and hit Batch from behind.
Tap move from Australia now. In past the captain, Tony Shaw. Hipwell over the top. Out it goes now from Slack. McKidd. Bruce Robertson now. Dalton in support.
Well, Australia are electing to take that tap and run it. Position where I think they'd have been better to push it down, even though they only gained 20 or 30 metres.
Donaldson through to Hipwell. This is Richards.
And another sound kick from Richards. The boy under a lot of pressure when he came onto the field, and so far has handled it in an admirable manner.
Injury on the field at the moment. Doug Bruce's knee giving him bother again. It's been a problem for him throughout the game. And I think it looks like it will be a chance for Brian McKechnie to come into the game. So Doug Bruce has been bothered right throughout most of the match. Canterbury favourite getting a sympathetic round of applause as he leaves the field. So Bruce in the background here. Dalton throws. Now it's Gary Knight. Now another New Zealand forward charge.
Well, Australia would like to get possession now because here comes this player coming on now.
There's Brian McKechnie coming on, and he'll go into first 5/8 for his third appearance, number 21 McKechnie. His third test match. His first two, of course, were at fullback against France, in France, late in 1977. So McKechnie on the field for Doug Bruce, with 14 minutes gone in the second half. Score still favours New Zealand, 15-6. Hipwell. Bruce Robertson through with Taylor and McKechnie right on the line.
Well, there's a fair indication that the Australian players don't relish the slippery ball. They couldn't control it, and of course the New Zealand players pouring through relish that ball on the ground. A very near thing for Australia. Australia in a real danger zone now.
Donaldson just 10 metres out. Sear, Donaldson, Wilson, that's Stuart Wilson from the right wing. Donaldson getting a armchair ride today. Taylor. Gary Pearce deflected that ball, the Australian loose man who really relishes the muddy conditions. One player who does have a bit of a reputation as being a bit of a mudlark is Gary Pearce. Now an injured Australian. This is Greg Cornelson holding his upper arm.
Yes, well, Australia can ill afford to have too many injuries, but it is Cornelson who's been having quite a sound game. Has been covering up in defence. Keith was mentioning Gary Pearce. Gary Pearce is a player that is never very far from the ball.
Pearce backing down on the side of this scrum here. Cornelson goes into the back again. Hipwell turning scrum. Hipwell. Devon Wilson going back. The rain has stopped there. It's a high kick down for Jeff Richards. My word, he's playing well. Now this one is in play. Mark Taylor. Sear. John Ashworth and Horton. That's fiery little Peter Horton, the Queensland hooker. He's right in the action again today, as he was last week. Right in the thick of it. This is right. To Williams. That's Bill McKidd. That's a good one. It's put the ball behind New Zealand. And Wilson across. Good kick ahead by Bill McKidd. Now McKidd, number 13, like Bruce Robertson, number 13, has had very little to do in this match. There's Bill McKidd from Barraba in New South Wales country, his third international today, but he's been on 3-2 as an experienced player with the Wallabies. So again on the 22. New Zealand 15, Australia 6, 17 minutes second half. Hipwell to right. That's Slack slipping. Hipwell again.
Well, you can see there when Australia decided to leash the ball or send it along the line, their footing was very difficult to hold.
And getting up rather slowly for the All Blacks. Looks like John Ashworth, is it? That's Ashworth, who's receiving attention, is a local player here from Canterbury, although he plays for the Kaiapoi Club, which is in country areas of the Canterbury Union. And Ashworth is a big man at 6'1" and weighing 17 stone, and this is his second international. And he's been part of a good driving New Zealand forward unit this afternoon.
Yes, the whole, I think the whole New Zealand pack have gone in a great fashion today. Much better than they did last week. They've built up a combination, they've built up a degree of drive that has really made it difficult for the Australian pack. The Australian pack keeps coming back, which should do well with plenty of time to go.
Brian McKechnie down in midfield. Richards gets away from Wilson. Now Bruce Robertson makes the pick up. Stu Wilson. Garrick Fay back there. Good tackle by Rutledge. It was Garrick Fay, the big man, also over 6'5" tall. He got back in good fashion, covering. And Fay, of course, a good kick up the touchline, but we shouldn't really question Fay as a kicker because he once drop kicked a goal in a test match. And that's unusual for a lock. That was a few years ago against Tonga, I think it was, on the Sydney Cricket Ground. Coming back to Hipwell now. Australia trying to build something out of this desperate position they're in. Rutledge through again, making a very good tackle. Donaldson. McKechnie. That was a high punt by McKechnie, which seemed to go between the posts. Brian McKechnie from Southland. Drop out from the 22. Ken Wright again, another little miscue. Sear getting through, that's the way to play it.
It's not a good kick from Ken Wright. He's would be better to punch it a little bit further upfield. The wind's still affecting it. Blowing it back to the Australians.
On the 22, midfield. Donaldson can go left or right. Turned it into Rutledge. Well wrapped up by Fay. Now Frank Oliver takes them on. 12 metres out, Donaldson. The momentum is forward. Corner flag in the background.
Well, once again, New Zealand rolling off the ball, supporting each other very well, spreading the Australian defence up across the field. Australia did well, though, to cover that one up.
New Zealand have had scrum position 18 times to Australia's 11, with just one tight head each. And from the lineouts, it's 17-9 to New Zealand. Donaldson. Infield to Stu Wilson. Nice little flip pass. Wilson still going, and got there. It was a nice little flip-up pass from Mark Donaldson, and Wilson got through the first line, hit a wall, but then kept on. So one of the Australian players injured behind the line looks like Hipwell. He was involved in the collision between when Wilson came through and was the first defender to get there. So Hipwell on the ground. He's been a vital part for Australia here today, as he was last week, since coming into this tour also as a replacement. He's had 3 matches out of 4. Looks like an arm injury or shoulder injury. John Hipwell. The score now, with New Zealand having scored its 3rd try, 19 points to 6. Gary Sear, Stu Wilson and Mark Taylor all crossing. The Australians look a little dejected as they listen, with one of their top players receiving attention.
Well, Hipwell has had really a rugged day today, and he's been getting plenty of attention, particularly from Rutledge. Rutledge has shown us that he's certainly a player of class. He's been around chasing Hipwell for most of the day, and of course Hipwell has been behind a pack that has been a little bit too loose on occasions, and the New Zealand pack have taken the advantage of that. And here you can see Hipwell obviously made a desperation effort there to stop Wilson from scoring, but some of the Australian defence was not quite in the position it should have been. But it was certainly good play by New Zealand. The little flick pass was beautifully executed.
New Zealand 19.
Way to the right, 19 points to 6.
Well, Australia, a tremendous task ahead of them. One can't see them getting up. They could make a fight of it, and certainly they are the boys that can do it. He's right.
Well, that's about the 3rd or 4th missed kick today from Wright, if we count that unfortunate penalty, and really things not going his way at all. That was a bad missed cue again, even allowing for this slippery ball. It's the 3rd or 4th time it's happened for Ken Wright. So Donaldson now at halfway. New Zealand 19, Australia 6. Perhaps we should say the same about Donaldson that time, but that's a kick that's gone across the touchline on the full. Mark Donaldson certainly has had a much better day today than he had last week at Athletic Park. For 23 minutes of play. Way out now into the Australian backs. Getting away from slack. Again, Richards in position. Scrum called in midfield, with New Zealand's put in.
Well, Richards once again showing that he's not overawed with this occasion. His first test when he was rushed over here.
Midfield again. Donaldson. McKechnie. That's out towards Batch. Bruce Robertson's closing. Robertson ruled ahead of the play, or was it a fair catch?
I'd say a fair catch, but it was a well-planned move. Nice kick by McKechnie. Batch had the pressure on him.
Down to Brian Williams, number 11. 30-metre line.
We're driving.
Slack now. The kid. Batch across from the right wing. This is Moon. Whistle's gone.
Well, something happened
Penalty
behind the play there.
Yes, it was. I'm sure that involved Batch coming in. One of the New Zealand players interfered with Batch. He's out of the range of the cameras. "16 minutes left in the match. Tony Shaw. McKechnie, a good tackle. Hipwell. That's Slack. Here's Hipwell again. Getting past here. Good break. John Hipwell. Cornelson. This is Australia coming back with spirit. Gary Pearce. Batch. McKechnie. That's Australia's best move in this half. Really coming back at the All Blacks that time.
Yes,
the man that led it, John Hipwell.
Yes, the man that really has been doing some good work in the recent moments. Hipwell, the man, just hasn't got the good support around him, other than Wright.
Hipwell again getting through. I think that was fair enough on Hipwell's part. He made the tackle on McKechnie, a strong one, then assisted McKechnie to his feet, and one of the New Zealand players objected. Peter McLean, Gary Knight. Barry Ashworth with the big sideboards. Tony Shaw, a worried man at 19.6. Gary Pearce and Gary Sear. "25-metre line. Fay. Australia having a good patch here. Right. Slack. Hard to keep your ground. New Zealand players are offside. Up over again, and this is in centre field. Still a long way out.
Well, it will be interesting to see if Shaw changes his kicker. He's not taking a kick.
This could be the up the jumper move. This is the... Here's trouble in centre field. A bit of needle. The Australian team were setting themselves, I'm sure, for the up the jumper move, which is the one where they all put their hands up underneath. And the New Zealand team ran forward thinking they'd made the kick. Let's see what happens. They're still clustered around. It could be the up the jumper. This is the first time this has been seen in Test rugby. Now they'll all come out with their hands up their jumpers. Let's see what happens. Well, it's a slight variation. This is the Daryl Harbright influence of Australia really coming back at New Zealand at last. Things warming up. That's Moon playing halfback. The momentum just spoilt with the ball being put out on the full. Trevor Allen, that's the one of these unusual moves that Daryl Harbright likes to introduce.
Yes, it's one he introduced many years back, and it caught everyone by surprise. That one also caught a lot of the New Zealanders by surprise. Australia really struggling. They've no midfield players able to make a break whatsoever.
So Dalton throws. Fay getting up. Hipwell tidying again. Right. Slack. McKidd left out. Is that Batch? Yes. Across from the right wing. Here's Richards. Caught by Sear. New Zealand coming back at the 22.
Well, once again, the power of the New Zealanders moving up with the ball. And when Australia falter, they're right with it, pushing Australia back gradually.
Set up nicely for Taylor. Wild one field, which has gone to Barry Ashworth. That's over the line, but not forced down, well held. Was it Moon that came across there? Brendan Moon, there he is. This young man, just 19 years of age. Ken Wright now running the ball up to the 22. Let's see, let's go back and look at that again. Let's rethink that one. It's a penalty to New Zealand. What's happened here?
Well, that's a fair way back. That's a very difficult one to work out just what happened there. The referee certainly has allowed the advantage rule to go, which was only natural because New Zealand almost scored a try. But whether something happened after the play moved past a certain area, but I couldn't pick it, Keith.
Well, that's a hard one, all right.
Here it comes. Well, that was a very interesting decision. You could see it coming up on the far touchline, and the referee did the right thing, allowed the play to go, and New Zealand were over the line but held up by Moon.
So just 10 minutes left in the match. They've changed their kicker as well. They might, Australia. Ken Wright's not had much success with it today. This is Jeff Richards kicking down to Sear. New Zealand go into the maul. Now driving. For Nelson, thrown down by Oliver. Injury break. So it's cleared again. Peter Horton to throw. Less than 10 minutes left. 19 points to 6. Rutledge over the top, well set up again for Donaldson, running the narrow side, McKechnie, Frank Oliver. And that's against Garrick Fay, coming through in an offside position, a big lock forward. New Zealand are going to try a tap, I think. Donaldson with the ball, but Wilson being called forward.
Well, New Zealand happy to add the points. New Zealand going quite well. Garrick Fay was certainly on offside position in that maul. Australia fought back a short while ago, looked as though they were going to storm back, but New Zealand once again, through their forwards, have taken charge.
By Bevan Wilson. So New Zealand going through now to 22 points to 6.
Yes, Wilson, it was a long distance one. It just crossed the bar. You could tell by the touch judges they waited a long time, and it must have just limped over, but it was 3 points were there.
So Australia kick out again. Kenwright to Oliver. With New Zealand turning back that attack by Australia. Frank Oliver asking the question here. But Oliver, I'm sure, overall will be pleased indeed with 22 points to 6. Kenwright, that's old-fashioned up and under. Mark Donaldson got it. Come away to right. Kicked out for Williams' wing. Referee there in position. Drop out from the 22. Williams kicking it over the dead ball line.
Well, Williams, very experienced player. Made no doubt about that one. He knew where it should be, and that was up with the crowd. And he did just that.
So Bruce Robertson, a little kick out to the right. Back to Richards. Gathered that one really well. Ken Wright. Nice piece of play by Wright and Richards in the Australian backs. But still, they're not making much penetration, apart from that initial burst about 5 minutes ago, following that break by Hipwell, which the All Blacks turned back immediately and went through to get their third try. Dalton. Advantage will be allowed here. There's a classic example of the tackling from a little man, Ken Wright. He really got through and lowered Dalton, who's a powerful player. And Wright, remember, the smallest man on the field at only 5'8" and just 11 stone. The throw was not straight. There was no advantage to Australia. Hippel's ball. Now right. Slack. No way through again. See Rutledge there, number 7. Australia win it though. Hippel's got a bit of room. Flipped it to Andrew Slack. Brendan Moon.
Well, a degree of unorthodoxy pouring into this game now from Australia, taking a few gambles, and certainly they must.
So this is loose ball. Five minutes left in this match. Saw the hand come up from Peter Horton, signalling that he was ready. Right. Richards up and through. That's the first penetration that Australia's had. Bet! Gary Sear rather turning strongly. 13 is Bill McKidd. So Jeff Richards is the man. The Australian centres, Slack and McKidd, haven't been able to get through all day. Jeff Richards came in that time. It was well timed. He got through.
Yes, Richards, as I said earlier, has the mould of Laurie Monaghan coming into the back line. And I'm afraid he's about the only attack we've got there.
This looks like a free kick against the New Zealand front row. Ball being run forward. Australia will have to have a set move here. Or maybe they'll have a drop kick. 2 balls on the field.
I would suggest there's a move on anyway, Keith.
Right. Cornelson. Lost forward, Donaldson.
Well, the move was on. And there's Donaldson. Had a sound game. He's driven his forwards all day today, and there he is at it again. Most halfbacks are good talkers, and Mark Donaldson obviously is an excellent one. He's driven his forwards well.
Play getting high. Dalton through on Hipwell. Gary Knight carries it on. Paddy Batch skies one back to Bevan Wilson. Well, Bevan Wilson today, 2 conversions and a good strong performance from fullback. So that's push play now up to the halfway mark. So each time Australia comes down with enterprise, New Zealand send them back. Just 3 minutes left in the match. Technique. Penalty in here to New Zealand.
There's undoubtedly something behind play. And Australia have made quite a few mistakes in this area today. Given away a lot of penalties.
Penalties have favoured, in fact, overall Australia. 10-8 penalties and free kicks, and that's Bevan Wilson's best punt with the ball from halfway down, just yards from the Australian goal line. So it's Peter Horton readying himself for another throw. Lineouts favouring New Zealand by 18-13. The corner flag, and very muddy just beyond the playing surface. Dave Miller's blown the whistle. The match is over. The match is over, and New Zealand have won the second test and therefore have won the series by 22 points to 6. Mark Taylor, Gary Sear and Stu Wilson scored tries. Bevan Wilson kicked 2 conversions, and Doug Bruce, before he retired hit, dropped a goal. Australia kicked, with Wilson getting a penalty goal as well. Australia got a penalty to Ken Wright and a drop kick also by Ken Wright. New Zealand 22 and Australia 6.
For the whole match, but obviously I did expect, if New Zealand won the toss, was to run with the wind, because they would put tremendous pressure on McLean, who must be, Paul McLean, their fullback, must be under a slight cloud with his fitness. And I think they've given Australia a little bit of leeway.
So this is Ken Wright, the man who played such a vital role in the test for Australia last week. So the second international for the 1978 tour by Australia against New Zealand begins with Ken Wright's kick. Gary Sear puts the ball to touch. Australia have the advantage of a strong southerly breeze in the first half. Number 8 is Greg Cornelson. 7 is Lester Rutledge for New Zealand. The Australian backs, you notice, lined out in attacking fashion. Peter Horton to make the first throw. Throw-ins in the first half may favour New Zealand if they're bouncing about, because the wind will blow them there. Now that's what Jack Gleeson said he expected more of from the New Zealand team in this test. More driving forward play in the All Black tradition. Halfbacks today, Mark Donaldson and John Hipple. Donaldson with the ball. Doug Bruce deflected by Ken Wright. Stu Wilson. This is Barry Ashworth, number 6. The whistle has gone, however. The whistle has gone. These men are playing a game of their own.
Well, there must have been a slight knock on there. I must admit, I didn't quite see it. It must have been a very fine one by the All Blacks. And Australia knocked that ball down. It looked like Ken Wright. And so Australia were in with a chance. But they looked bad then, but the whistle had gone, of course.
John Hipple has the first loose head for Australia in this match. 2 minutes, first half. Wright dropped that one, purely and simply. Taylor through with Bruce. Wilson waiting. That's Bevan Wilson putting play up to halfway. Paul McLean took the ball that time. You see the bandage on his right knee, and that's the big question mark for Australia today. Can that knee survive 80 minutes? Let's see how the wind affects this one. We'll get a good view down the halfway line. Peter Horton from Queensland throw. That one fooled no one. The crowd spoke their opinion. Not straight. New Zealand's put in on halfway. Donaldson looking for an improved performance after a disappointing display by him last week. Someone's going to have to play halfback. Frank Oliver does it. Dive past the Bruce. Wilson, it's hard to turn in the slippery conditions. Good kick ahead along the touchline by Batch.
This Batch, big burly winger, is one player that, as we saw last week, went near the line, very difficult to stop. It was a good kick. And so now Batch has put Australia in a good attacking position just inside the quarter.
So that's Andy Dalton, just 20 metres from New Zealand's line. Donaldson, referee Miller, penalty Australia.
Well, that was very difficult to pick, and it looked as though maybe there was some assistance, but one could hardly see it from this side of the field. And it's coming up. It's the first chance for anyone to kick. And so here it is. Ken Wright coming up to take the first chance for either side to score. This is not a difficult one. It was interesting prior to the game to hear Ferdy McCormick talking about kicking. Now, Ferdy McCormick was a great goal kicker for Canterbury, which of course is their home ground, and he was discussing the swirling breeze. Now, I believe down this end the breeze does swirl round, and this is for Australian viewers to really get into this kick of Ken Wright's. It swirls around, and it's not an easy end, apparently, to kick.
12 minutes gone. Loose ball near the line. Well, that's interesting. Now, I know for one that Andy Leslie's got a theory about the ball hitting the post here at Lancaster Park, and it's happened again.
Well, I must say that we discussed that just before the game.
Hipwell caught by Donaldson. Bruce Robertson and Taylor playing soccer. Taylor looked as though he's headed the ball and accidentally offside. That was one thing we were discussing. Andy Leslie has this theory, I know for one, that the ball does hit the post a lot here at that end at Lancaster Park, and that happened again with Ken Wright. Why it happens, one does not know. John Hipwell. Here's a drop kick. And that, Ken Wright got a second bite of the cherry and has drop kicked Australia into an early 3-point lead. Ken Wright, number 10.
And so there it is, Australia 3, New Zealand 0.
"13 minutes gone. Australia out in the lead. Wilson's kicked strongly, but you see how that ball holds up in the wind, which is behind Australia. Paul McLean. So far, McLean not being put to the test, though Australians will be pleased to have the wind behind them in the first half, because it would have been doubly difficult for Paul McLean to have played with the dicey leg into this high wind. Good tap by number 4, Hayden. Bruce to Mark Taylor, having a run, trying to test that Australian defence, which was so shaky last week. Donaldson, New Zealand trying to keep it going with his driving forward play. Quickly in, Australia up offside, and that cost them points last week, and they've conceded a penalty again in midfield, but it's 40 metres out. It'll be a tough one. So here's Bevan Wilson, first attempt now. That's the 10-metre line.
Well, with the All Blacks pouring through there, you've got a fair indication of the power of them, certainly making it very difficult for Hipwell.
Squeeze! Oh, quiet!
Hipwell now. It's time to Wright. That's a high test for Wilson. Bevan Wilson under it.
Well taken. A lot of pressure coming from 3 or 4 Australians. Took that well. And there you get an indication that the wind is fairly strong. He was centre field. But we might get a look at the touch judge flag there. It's billowing a fair bit. So Australia certainly have the advantage with the wind. Now it's all wrapped up, so we can't really tell.
International referee Tom Ducey running the line on the far side. Short line up, called by Australia. Sia made the intercept. Donaldson. Bruce. That one's gone straight through Paddy Batch's legs on the far side. That kick from number 10, New Zealand's first 5'8", Doug Bruce, playing on his home ground here this afternoon. Clean line outs 2 weeks at the moment. You can see the Peter Horton drying the ball off deliberately before each throw. That's to get the proper traction to his grip. Most important. Garrick Fay, number 5, with Barry Ashworth handing off Hipwell, who gets back into the action. This is just outside the Australian 22. And New Zealand are driving more strongly already than they did last week.
Yes, I would think that their tactics have changed a little bit. They're going to certainly, as they're against the wind, use the power of their forwards.
Donaldson, way to Bruce, changed to Mark Taylor. That's Williams. Centre kick. Let's see how McLean handles this. Paul McLean. That's a big kick with the wind. Once again, the All Blacks putting plenty of men behind Bevan Wilson, the fullback, who's put it up in the air, and that's hanging up in the breeze. Cornelson got through well. 10-metre mark in Australian territory. Donaldson finds Bruce. Donaldson again. The old cricketing adage, never take your eye off the ball. Donaldson was just looking anxiously to see where the opposition was coming from, and the ball deflected forward.
Well, I think Donaldson was on his way before he really got the ball. He had made up his mind and took his eye off it.
It's the halfway line. Hipwell to right. It's moving this time to Slack. Barry Ashworth, 10-metre line, Australia. New Zealand will have the foot in here. 10 minutes gone, first half, no score. Scrum position, no loose heads so far, but 5 scrums, 1 for New Zealand. Donaldson slipping that time to Bruce. Taking time to find themselves again. It's a little awkward out there. Here's Paddy Batch. Here's Paul McLean. That's a big kick with the wind. Bevan Wilson back inside the 22. Lots of support behind him. The All Blacks dropped 3 or 4 men back in support of the man with the ball.
Well, that kick by McLean will have given him a reasonable amount of confidence. I thought he was labouring a little bit getting across.
Cornelson 7 for the Blacks. Gary Knight is number 8. Cornelson number 8, I should say. Lester Rutledge number 7. Deflected onto Australia's side. Peter McLean taking it in.
There we're watching the power of this All Black pack. Last week they had about 3 new caps in their lineup. They'll be putting it together, but the Australian pack went very well last week.
Hipwell to right. That's Slack kicking through to Wilson. Stu Wilson just hurried that one a little. That's Wilson number 14. So the line-out battles we put out between Oliver and Hayden for New Zealand and Clay and Peter McLean for Australia. But Cornelson, as usual, getting good ball down at the back against the New Zealand jumper down there, Gary Sear. This is Peter Hawke. Five minutes gone.
The penalty against Australia. Currently interference in the line-out. Remember, New Zealand facing a fairly strong wind.
That's Hipwell. Ball still in play from Bevan Wilson's kick. Mark Taylor. Mark Donaldson got it. Couple of kicks there from New Zealand, not finding touch. Peter McLean. Gary Sear, backhanded to Tony Shaw. There was a fair bit of niggle in the first test, and referee Dave Miller did issue a final warning. Of course, he comes back to scratch here, dealing with players the same personalities here in the second test. 15 metres Australian territory. There's the 2 men involved in that instance. Tony Shaw to the right, and in the background, Gary Sear. Hipwell. Combination between Hipwell and Wright, not looking too good just in the early stages.
Yes, I'm wondering whether Hipwell is feeling the effects of that slippery ball. It will be very slippery, but so far, the combination, as Keith has said, Hipwell is not finding Wright, and Wright is not standing that far away.
10-7-6 Black.
Gary Knight deflected that one from Andy Dalton's throw. At fullback, his cousin Peter is locking the scrum. He comes in for Laurie Monaghan, of course, who's back home in Sydney, and I'm sure watching this match this afternoon. On the wing, Brendan Moon is in, and Bill McKidd comes in the centres. They're the three changes. Otherwise, the Australian team remains the same as for last Saturday. And the All Black side for the test today is identical to that which won the first test at Wellington last week by 13 points to 12. Captained by number 5, lock forward, Frank Oliver. You notice the New Zealand Army band there. Australian viewers, I'm sure, will be interested to see that rugby formation they're into. 30 bandsmen formed out in the rugby positions of two teams in opposition. New Zealand team arriving first on the oval, led by Frank Oliver, the captain. Here's Tony Shaw with the Australian team. And last onto the field for the participants is Dave Miller, the referee from last week, who will be refereeing his 6th international test match this afternoon.
Yes, well, I must tell viewers back home that the wind is fairly strong, blowing from right to left, very strong, and it will be important, I believe, to see what happens when the toss is made.
The national anthems. So the important thing to remember is that the wind is going from right to left. New Zealand team sprinting down. Looks like they may play from the left-hand half. That's the northern half, which will mean they're playing into the wind. There's Stuart Wilson, minus the big bandage around his head that we saw last week in Wellington, protecting a cut on the face. He'll be on the New Zealand's wing today, number 14, with Brian Williams, number 11. And it seems as though Australia will kick off, so New Zealand must have won the toss. And New Zealand electing to play into the wind, Trevor Allen.
Yes, that staggers me a little bit. This wind is very strong. It may continue